Okie dokie. Okay, hi everyone. I think most people are here now, so thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday morning. As you know, we've put together this series of expert sessions to support you through this ongoing and unusual lockdown era, and we hope that you find today's session and others that you attend helpful for your role as a mountaineering professional. I'd really like to thank the Youth Hostel Association for supporting us with this session today, and I'll introduce our speaker this morning, Mike, very shortly. Before that, I'd just like to run through some housekeeping rules. So if we have the next slide up. You'll be familiar with these aspects. There's not a lot new there. If we just ask you to make sure you have your full name on the screen, that would be helpful for us. Thank you. At some point there might be some annotations that may go on, and we can check and make sure that you're happy to use those. So I think we'll take questions throughout the session, particularly at the end. Please do write any questions you have in using the chat function, and we'll do our best to answer those as ever. That's enough from me. I'd really like to hand over to Michael Sabin, who will introduce himself on behalf of the YHA. Over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cress. And first of all, just a big thank you to Cress and Catherine for inviting me onto today's webinar, where I'm going to talk to you a little bit about YHA and how we can help support your course director, the courses and the partners and directors in terms of the work you guys all get involved with. So my name is Mike Sabin. I've worked at YHA now for 18 years. So I joined when the office relocated up from, head office used to be in St Albans, just north of London, and has now actually in 2001 relocated up to Matlock in Derbyshire, where head office is now, which is the point I joined the organisation. There were some pretty challenging times around that period, which I'll talk to you about a little bit later on. But yeah, just want to talk to you a little bit about YHA, the network that we've got, some of the work we get involved with, the charitable status of the organisation, and how we can work in partnership with you and hopefully support you with some future residentials and stays with YHAs all over the country. So the first slide that you can see on your screen there just showcases some of the fantastic, showcases one in particular location that we've got. And some of you might recognise the old Abbey there on the right-hand side, which is YHA Whitby, which is a lovely YHA that we've had now for about 10 years, really, really popular with groups and family and individual customers as well during the summer holidays. And we can do a wide range of activities and packages there from the location for all types of groups. But it's just showcases again a little bit, maybe a bit about perceptions that people who aren't so familiar with YHA and who may not have used us for quite a while, what we can offer. All our locations are pretty unique, pretty varied, and in some fantastic locations. So I will talk you through that throughout the presentation. So my first thing today was just talk to you guys and see what experiences you've had of YHA and who's been using YHA already, who stayed with YHA, which locations you may have been to, any perceptions you might have, and any feedback. And I can see quite a few ticks and crosses and annotations going on the screen there, which is great to see. A lot of people have used YHA. So my first question really was, who has stayed at YHA previously? And if that's either as a customer or for personal use, and that could be as an individual or part of a group stay, and also which locations you might have stayed at. So if you want to either unmute yourselves and answer to me during the presentation now or via the chat facility, then that would be great. So has anybody stayed at YHA previously? And if so, if they could be kind enough to share which locations you've been to and whether that was part of a group or an individual stay.
Just coming through on the chat, Mike, we have Mark, who stayed with groups, who takes his crew regularly, I believe, and looks like we've got a number of people who've stayed in some different venues coming through on the chat. Let's have a look.
What I'll do shortly is, of course, go through the location map so you can see the where, if people aren't so familiar with the network, they can see where what sites we've got and where we are in England and Wales. Yeah,
we've got a range from Scotland, you know, down to some further, much further south and in the Peak District.
Great. Yes. Well, in terms of Scotland, so I work for YHA England and Wales, so we cover obviously the locations and sites we've got throughout England and Wales, of which there are 150 of them. Scotland and Ireland, if anyone is interested in any locations we've got in over there, then they are separate associations to us. So one thing about YHA is we are part of Hosting International, so we're affiliated Hosting International, which has 60 member countries and 5,000 YHAs throughout the world. So it's a huge global operation, actually, which sometimes people don't realise. So I cover the locations in England and Wales. If you have any interest in Scotland, Ireland, or anywhere else for that matter, just let me know, and I can send you the links to the relevant association where the sites are.
Yeah, there are quite a few on the chat that have mentioned sort of Scotland and that sort of side of things, so that would be great. There's also, from the chat from Phil, I'm just going to read this out. So he says, I would imagine that they're fairly good and have a good standard of accommodation, as everyone now needs to up their game. And then he's asked, are you operating at this time with COVID? He's got a plan to go up to Skye, so hopefully
right.
He'd be interested in using the Youth Hospital Association.
Well, yeah, a couple of questions there, and I suppose that comes on to my next question on the slide there about perceptions people have about YHA. So first of all, I'll tackle that one, and then obviously COVID I was going to cover later on, but I will touch on it now as well. So in terms of perceptions, and I think you said his name was Phil. That's absolutely right. In terms of, I think if you stayed at a YHA 20, 25 years ago, it would have been very, very different to what you find now. YHAs are, when I joined the organisation, it completely opened my eyes in terms of the facilities that we've got across the network. And my dad used to go YHA in from one to another cycling, and he used to tell me that you couldn't, you had to have lights out by 10 o'clock, for example, bit of a curfew. You couldn't take your car. You have to help with the chores. It was quite basic, you know, nice accommodation, but quite basic. Quite big dormitory style rooms with maybe sometimes up to 20 beds in one single room, and that's all a thing of the past now. That's how it used to be, and that's sometimes a perception that some people do have about YHA, that it is still a bit like that. But it's completely changed. I would say our average size room now are sort of 4 to 6 bedrooms. You don't have to do the chores. We have staff that will obviously help with the the cleaning and and there's no bed making anymore. Beds are made for you at YHA, so that's all taken out of your hands. You can of course take cars now, and some of our locations are. And I was going to come on to the network shortly, but we've got some, we've spent a lot in reinvesting in the whole network. So we're a charity. So any money we make is reinvested back into the network. So there's been a lot of money ploughed into new openings, refurbishments and renovations of sites as well. So that's been a great development. And in terms of COVID, well, I have got a slide later on about the current situation and the climate. So we have reopened our network recently, July the 17th. We reopened as a network. it is quite restricted and limited in terms of what we can offer at the moment. So we can offer exclusive hire of a property, which I'll come on to shortly, room only, so where individuals can have a private room to themselves, or what else was it? Oh, the camping and cabins, the alternative accommodation that we offer, they are open as well. But it is quite limited. We can offer food, but it's more on a takeaway basis at the moment, and all shared and social spaces, unfortunately, can't be open. This is government guidelines that we're following. Obviously, that's ever changing, so that we're just obviously following government advice, and once that changes, then we'll be able to reopen more and more back to how we normally operate. So hopefully that answers Phil's question around the COVID situation as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any other questions at the moment?
Generally, it's comments on the chat. There's another nice one from Rachel. So stay to Tamberside for a conference of British cycling. It's a really good venue for that. And Hawksend is also a good venue to run.
Yeah, no, both great locations. And I'm going to come onto the map in a moment, but two in the Lake District that's been mentioned there. Ambleside's had a refurbishment a few years ago, including a brand new sort of cafeteria section, a restaurant area. It's lovely. And Hawkshead as well. Hawkshead's a great site, very popular with groups, and they have the camping pods in the grounds as well, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, both great sites.
Yeah, and have been used. The BMC used the Ambleside one just at the latter end of last year for a walking conference, and yeah, I believe the Hawkshead one is used a lot by the NCS groups and work.
That's right.
For example, yeah.
Yeah, we do get a lot of NCS groups using YHA, and that's Hawkshead a really popular one, like you say. So that's right. I think Ambleside was one of my first YHAs I ever went to on my induction. So we arrived there in the dark, and I had this sort of old school perception of what I thought YHAs might be like. And we arrived in the dark, and you knew you were right next to a lake. You couldn't see anything, it was pitch black. But then you go into the YHA, you have your dinner, and then we went to bed, wake up the following morning, pull those curtains open, and you just see the lake, Windermere, and the reflection with the beautiful day it was and the mountains, and you think, wow, what a location. It sort of really opened my eyes to what YHA could offer. So yeah, Ambleside's a great location. Okay, so if I shall I move on to the next slide then, because I've got a bit of we're talking about location, which is obviously very key for all of you. If I just go on to the next slide, and you can see there our location map and the 150 sites we've got in England and Wales. So you can see, I've just mentioned the Lake District, and I think I said earlier about the cluster of sites we've got in the Lake District there. We've got a nice little cluster in the Peak District, North and South Wales as well. So some really great sites, and it's a real sort of varied, unique locations, all of them. So we're in national parks like Lake District, Peak District, Snowdonia. We are in main cities, so we've got 7 down in London. We're in other cities like Liverpool and Manchester. We've got a brand new one in Newcastle. We've got a great one at York as well. The York one is a very popular one for meetings for various corporate groups. And we're around the coast as well. So we've got Pembrokeshire, we've got Devon and Cornwall. We're along the Jurassic coast there. I think probably if you look at the map, and it's quite easy to spot this from just looking at it there, the biggest sort of gap in the network, if you look everywhere else, it's pretty well populated. But the biggest gap is East England, East Anglia, Norfolk, Suffolk. We've got Sheringham and Wells up in the north, and Hunstanton there in Norfolk. And we've got Blacksall there in Suffolk, and Cambridge in the middle there. But outside of that, in that particular area, we're pretty thin on the ground. And I know it's something that our property team are always keeping an eye on in terms of where we've got locations and where we've got gaps, and where we might want to put some look opportunities for new sites as well. So yeah, pretty vast network. And like I said, as you can see, it's just England and Wales. So I'll make sure I send those Scottish association details on. So if we just look at the slide there as well, and as I was saying, any profits that are made by YHA are reinvested back into, one, our network, and two, into some fantastic and very rewarding projects that we work with or work on as part of our charitable status. So as you can see, £40.4 million was reinvested into our network. And you can see we've had 4 new hostels that are part of that. So we've got Newcastle, which is brand new, Liverpool, and we've got Brighton and Cardiff, which are all brand new sites and absolutely amazing locations. So that's really really good. And on top of that, as well as the new hostels, we've had 25 of the locations in the network have had major refurbishments. So Ambleside being one of them. I can think off the top of my head, we've had Malham in Yorkshire has had a refurbishment a few years ago. Stratford upon Avon, Canterbury down in the southeast, Penzance. So we've had some really good refurbishment and renovations, and I think that's a measure of how successful we've been over the past few years. And as you can see there, I can see someone's ticked the 47 camping and cabin sites. So we've got 150 hostels in total. And as part of those, we've got 47 what we call alternative accommodation, but that's camping and cabins. And that can be really varying in terms of, that could be campsites with camping space. It could be bell tents, or it could be the actual camping pods. So I've stayed in North Yorkshire in one of the camping pods when we just introduced them to the network, and they were basically a shell with a heater and a light inside. But they have changed quite a lot now, and have got bedding included, and some of them are en suite, and have got nice decking areas outside if you want a bit of breakfast, if it's a nice day. So really, really great little accommodation pods they are. Also, we are the largest learning outside the classroom accommodation provider in the country, which is pretty impressive. So we have got a vast network, and 84 of those sites have been accredited by Learning Outside the Classroom. So that quality assurance is there, the accreditation is there for any groups who want to come and stay with YHA. That they've all had sort of inspections and have passed, and we've got 84 sites that are accredited, which is great. So, has anybody got any other questions before I carry on? Or if you want to make a question via the chat facility, that's fine as well, of course.
Mike, can I ask a question?
Of course you can. Yes, that's fine.
In terms of the camping pods, is there a map that identifies, say, the pods only? So if we wanted to, for example, stay somewhere and you know, when we're doing our research, suss out where the locations of the pods?
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, so we've got on the website we've got a page that's dedicated to our camping and cabin sites. So I can send you a link to that, and you can easily identify there where we've got the camping pods, where there's campsites, where there's bell tents. Of course, I can send you the link for that. That's not a problem at all. I would just say one that always stands out for me, and they're all great, but Stratford upon Avon, which is a really grand YHA, the camping pods at Stratford are sort of tucked down the side. And if you do stay in the camping pods at Stratford in particular, and this is for all sites, by the way, but particularly Stratford stands out, is that you don't actually have to have any need to go into the YHA, really, if you choose not to. It can just be a separate little stay in the camping pods. There's an entrance from the car park at the back of the building that goes straight through to the camping pod area. You can stay in the camping pods, and then you could leave that way as well. So if you didn't want, you know, it's very separate from the normal business that the YHA has, which is great. So I'd really recommend them, and they are really, really popular. Hence why we've started introducing them to more and more sites across the network.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anybody got any other questions for me at the moment, or do you want me to, shall I carry on?
Yeah, I think carry on at the moment. We'll take the other questions later. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So I've got to just put on here some of our sites in the network, so you can see the real, I keep talking about locations, don't I, and how varied they are. These 9 images here show you the real sort of varied locations and a mix of locations we've got across England and Wales. So we've got on these pictures here, we've got a mixture of city sites and rural sites. What I haven't put on there actually is I don't think you can see any that we've got right next to the coast, which I should have put on. But so if I just go through them, in the top left there, we've got the new one at Brighton, which I've mentioned previously. So that was a former hotel, and if you're at the rear of the building, you're actually right next to, or right opposite, I should say, the pier, which is a brilliant location. So that's really, really, fantastic site. When you go in, the facilities are incredible. So yeah, really, really good. And I can see people are annotating and making sort of ticks and putting names of sites on the pictures there. So that's good. I see someone's already identified Penny Pass, which is brilliant. The top middle one, which someone has gold starred, that is YHA Cardiff. So again, brand new site, former hotel, lovely, lovely facilities. And we used to have a site in Cardiff, which is a lot different to this one. And this one is obviously, like I say, I think it's got about 280 beds in total. It's a really big site. So really, really good one as well. Top right, that looks like a field. So I do apologize, but it was just to give you the feel for the varied locations we've got. Now in the distance, you will just be able to see a building there. And that is this YHA, the new one we've got up, the still at Hadrian's Wall. So really popular for walkers, for school groups as well. Just down from Vindolanda, where they can do activities. So really, really good site. And that one is run in partnership with the Northumberland National Park. Now, someone's question marked the middle left one there as I look at it, and that is YHA South Downs, which is, again, a good site for educational groups. It was officially opened by the Queen about 5 or 6 years ago, and I think we had a bit more time from the Queen than than we were supposed to have, which apparently is unheard of. So I think we're meant to have about 30 minutes of a time. I think we ended up getting about 40 or 45 minutes, which is pretty good. So yeah, that's a great site. The middle one there, we've mentioned a couple of times, is Stratford upon Avon. Someone has spotted that is Penny Pass on the middle right there, which is a great site and brilliant location. We get a lot of walkers going in there as well, and a lot of groups stay at the Penny Pass site. Someone's identified Whitby with the Abbey there next to it, which we obviously talked about earlier, which is the bottom left. Middle at the bottom there is the Ambleside, and you can see there the Parasol, and that area there is the new refurbishment that we had a few years ago, and that's the new cafe area, which is really, really popular. And the bottom right there is Edale in Derbyshire, which is our flagship #1 action adventure site, where you can come and do a variety of adventurous activities, such as, I should say, climbing, abseiling, high ropes, low ropes, archery, orienteering, night hikes, all that sort of stuff. And they've got on-site activities at Edale, but also a fleet of minibuses that will take groups off-site as well to go to see, maybe do some canoeing or do some water sports or go weaseling or whatever whatever the group chooses to do. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of some of the sites we've got in the network. Okay, so I will move on to the next slide. So as you can see here, some of the achievements of the last year. So I've seen on the chat facility there was a question around age and what age people need to, or what age, is there an age limit, or is it for all ages? And the answer to that is yes, it is for all ages. Any age can stay at YHA. We have had a focus more on the under 26 market and young people, because when we looked at our demographics and data a few years ago, we were finding that although we're getting a lot of people through the doors, it was mainly, or we weren't getting as many young people as we were hoping for. We've had a big push on that at the moment, and as you can see, last year we reached over 1.5 young people, which is amazing, and we just want to continue that growth for the under 26 market. As you can see in the middle box there, we've got we had £50 million worth of income with 4 million cash surplus reinvested, so that could be into many of the projects that we've talked about earlier. And the under 26 guests, which I've already mentioned, you can see there we had 425,000 under 26 guests, with 142,000 of those staying in and around the national parks, with a bit of a push we've had to get people to visit the national parks, like the Lake District, the Peak District, and away from the cities sometimes, to get those young people to come out into the rural network. And we had just under 100,000 people also go on our school trips and residentials, which is fantastic. Just hoping to continue to grow that, because we are in growth with educational groups at the moment, or at least we were before. Obviously lockdown has put a bit of a pay to group business this year, but yeah, you can see we're on the right track in terms of our work with the under 26 market. Has anybody got any questions at this point? So you're all busy with the annotations, which is great. Really helpful to see that, actually. So, okay. So, so I talked about our workers, our charitable work. So we, as it says there, we're here to enrich the lives of all our guests, and it's all about health and well-being and life skills as well. And there's so many facets that YHA can support young people with in terms of how we, what we can do. So in terms of our charitable focus, we are the 9th largest children's charity in the country. A lot of people don't always realise that fact. And we can do some fantastic work with young people and groups of young people. So we have some support funds available to support young people. So we do a lot of work with schools from highly deprived areas. So we've got a list of schools that have been identified by the DFE. So we can do work for, or provide some support in terms of costs. It's not a bottomless pit of money, of course, but it's a discretionary fund, and it can help young people come away on a school trip, for example, that maybe they won't be able to otherwise. And it's the same, not just for schools. This is young people from deprived families, from single parent families, children with disabilities, children with learning difficulties. So it's the full spectrum. Also, yeah, families. We do a lot of work with families as well. So there's a lot of great work that we do, really rewarding, to ensure that young people are getting away on a holiday that they might not be able to go on otherwise. And if anyone's got any questions about any of the charitable side of it, or any support funds, or any of the discretionary funds that I'm talking about, then please do let me know, and I'll be happy to talk through those with you in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Maybe we can put some links on at the end. So, and when the webinar goes out to members, we can, have those so people can follow them up.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be absolutely fine. Thank you for that. And then this is more to do with how YHA can support mountain training, really. So all about programs and partnerships. So we work in partnership with a number of organisations, and it's all around promoting healthy lifestyles, increasing young people's participation in physical activity, boosting literacy and educational attainment. I always like to point to the packages we run in partnership with Walker Books, the Alex Rider novel, who do the Alex Rider novels. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Alex Rider novels that children read, but they are really popular. And it's a great way where groups of young people can come away and stay with YHA. For example, EDAL, I mentioned earlier, is one site that does this. And it gives, the package involves physical activity, great. A lot of time spent in the outdoors, which is great. But also, all the participants get to take away an Alex Rider novel. So there's a real link there with literacy as well. So it's a fantastic package, and really, really popular. So that's just one example of sort of how we're working in partnership with organisations to offer a programme to groups of all ages, but particularly young people. And this leads me on to really how we can work with mountain training. So as you can see there, how can YHA work with mountain training, course providers and directors? So I've talked a lot about locations, which I think is absolutely key, of course, for all of you. So we've got all the locations that I've gone through across national parks, coastal regions, and also city sites. We have locations that vary in size. Some locations are as small as 16 beds, and some go up to, we've got a location as small as 16 beds, and we've got the largest one, which is in London, Thameside, which is 320 beds in size. So we can accommodate groups of all size, because we know if you've got a group of, say, 20 people, you might prefer to have a smaller site, where you can have, say, if you chose a 25-bedded YHA, which was in a region and it was all very suitable for what you needed in terms of location, then you could have that site to yourselves. Whereas if you have say, if a group of 20 wanted a 70 or 80-bedded hostel, that's fine. But there might be other groups in there, which again is no problem, because some groups want that anyway. But if you want it exclusively, then we can offer what we call sole use, which is the next point down. So you can have a sole use of any location in our network, but it just means that if it's a larger site that you're choosing to stay at, we will ask you to pay for a certain amount of empty beds that you're not filling as a supplement to cover the cost of the whole location, if that makes sense. And I mentioned sole use, that's one area for all the properties in the network. And I've also seen, again, something on the chat facility about exclusive hire, which is slightly different. So exclusive hire is where we have certain sites in the network available on exclusive hire. And that is where a group or family groups can come in. It's quite popular at the moment with groups of families, in terms of we're allowed 2 households up to 6 people plus a bubble, where they can come in and have the whole site, as it says on the tin, exclusive hire of the property, no YHA staff there. It's exclusively the groups for however many days they choose to take it. And that's really popular. And I've just seen Mark's mention that he stayed at Coniston Copper Mines, which is a great site. And Mark's comment there is that he paid £149 for a night for the whole of Coniston Copper Mines, which is fantastic value. I'm sure you'd agree, particularly when you look at the location. So yeah, that's a really popular product that we offer.
Yeah, it looks on the chat as if quite a few people have made the most of that. There was another question as well. I was asking about sort of how you deal with sort of like teachers and children within an area. So how do you keep the children together or separate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we accommodate school groups, it's obviously a key point that is that we can offer schools, depending again on the site that they choose, but we have group leader rooms. So there are leader rooms where the group leader will be accommodated, so separate to the children, of course, their own separate private room. And what we will do is dot those, the way the YHAs are made up, these leader rooms are dotted around corridors. So we've got the group in one corridor, for example, and might be a leader room at one end and one at the other. So they're there to make sure they're all behaving themselves in the middle of the night. If there's any issues, the leaders are on hand to help out if needed. But yeah, separate accommodation. We can accommodate school groups. It's a big ask, or it's a big request from schools about being sometimes having exclusive use of a particular wing, or being very self-contained. So they've got they've got a self-contained part of the hostel or a particular building in a hostel, just so they're away from other groups or anybody else staying on site. And we can provide that. We're very secure. We've got Salto key access across a lot of the sites, which some of you I'm sure are familiar with, where that key will only allow your group into that part of the building. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. On top of that as well, a lot of our YHAs have got excellent classroom, conferencing, meeting facilities now as well. So again, for any of you who are wanting to maybe use YHA as part of a course, or for some studies, or for a meeting, then we've got fantastic facilities in some great locations across the country. So a lot of groups and a lot of organisations take us up on that and use a facility in a certain part of the country where they're away from everything and they've got a classroom or meeting facility away from their normal environment, shall we say. And then it's a new environment. A lot of schools use it, for example, for revision. Revision breaks is to get the school children who are preparing for an exam away from their normal environment into, say, a national park where mobile access might not be the greatest, and they can really concentrate and home in on sort of revision studies. So it's really key. I say about the mobile signal might not be great, but what our YHAs do offer now, by the way, as well, is Wi-Fi. So throughout all our YHAs across the network, vast majority anyway, we have got the Wi-Fi access, which is great for meetings, of course. A lot of people need that. Full catering options available. So again, YHA have won awards for catering in the past for the food we can offer. We can offer continental or cooked breakfasts in the morning, so we can go from bed and breakfast right up to full board. So we can do, like I say, continental or full cooked breakfast. We can offer lunches and that, and a lot of groups take us up on the packed lunch option there, so because they might want to be out and about doing activities, so a packed lunch is perfect for what they need. But if required, we can look at hot buffet lunches as well. And then we've got the evening meals, which are really popular and really varied in terms of the menus throughout the week for groups. Alternative accommodation, we've talked about that, the various campsites, the bell tents and the camping pods we've got across the network. I'll make sure I send the link to the page on the website where we have these facilities and these products available. Like I said, they are really, really popular. And on a full board booking, we offer 3 leader places. So if you make a full board booking with YHA, if you have a group of 30, for example, and 3 leaders, the 3 leaders, it's a 1-to-10 ratio where we can offer 3 leader places. So in a group of 30, 3 leaders as well, the 3 leaders would be free of charge. And we recommend for groups to take us up on the free planning visits as well, which are key. We find that they're really, really popular, but really good for group leaders or teachers or course leaders to come and do a bit of a recce of the site before their stay, meet the manager, do risk assessments and all that sort of stuff. And we can offer that for 2 leaders, bed and breakfast, completely free of charge prior to their stay. Obviously, it's subject to availability, but that is a key thing to mention. And that's for groups with existing bookings. We also offer the familiarisation visits. We've got a body of events planned, or we did have pre-COVID, a whole body of programmes planned where we're inviting group leaders, teachers to come along with their families for a weekend where they might not be familiar with YHA and come along and see exactly what YHA today can offer. Get sort of meals included, an overnight, so you can see what the overnight's like, see the layout of the hostel, have a go at some activities if you choose to do so, speak to some local attractions about what's available in the area. Just a really great way of coming to find out about what YHA can offer to you as a group in terms of, in terms of sites, in terms of locations, in terms of activities as well. So we did have a whole body planned, 1 per month actually, prior to lockdown. Obviously, we've had to cancel all those at the moment, but we will be putting these back on again when we're back to some form of normality. And I'll make sure I send the links and the dates and the details through to Cress and Catherine so they can be shared with you all.
There's a lot of information at Mountain Training. We don't know whether people, for example, meet clients at youth hostels or have many clients who they might meet from the door when you're taking them out on the hill, whether it's a NAV course or a mountain training course, whatever. So it might be helpful for us actually if people are happy to annotate, maybe just on here for ease on this slide. If you know that you've had clients and you've and they've stayed at a youth hostel association, could you just give us an indication? Would that be okay? but that's something that we can, we can look at if that's helpful moving forwards.
I just want to ask a question. What do you see? What's your vision for the Youth Health Association as you go forward in the next sort of 5-10 years? What do you see it? Do you see it staying in the same format, or do you have a vision for major changes in terms of your offerings, etc.?
Well, I think over the last few years we've seen, quite a big change in terms of. So when I joined in 2002. We went through a real period of struggle because there'd been the September the 11th attack, which had wiped out a lot of international tourism. And then we had the foot and mouth crisis where half our network had to close down, and we lost, millions and millions during that period. And we were, struggling a bit, and we had to sell some sites, unfortunately, make some tough decisions. Some sites had to close. But, over the last few, sort of last decade, we've really, really picked up in terms of our business again and found our feet again, and are doing really well again at the moment, very successful in terms of when you look at our groups and family and individual business across the network. There's been a lot of period of modernisation of the network as well, in terms of there's a big demand for us to move away from the larger dormitories, if you like, and we do still have some rooms with maybe 8 to 10 beds, some hostels with 8 to 10 bedded rooms, but they are a lot more less now than they used to be. So there's been that move towards sort of smaller rooms, more modern accommodation, and I would say our average room size now is 4 to 6 bed. And to continue to work with partners such as Mountain Training and DOV and people like Carnegie, with Mark and people like that, and looking and getting and more young people to YHA as well, because while YHA is obviously open to everybody, there was probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, there weren't enough young people either members or using YHAs, but that's increased massively over the last few years, and we want to continue with that.
Yeah.
See some comments here about outdoor activity provider that take our school groups to YHAs, which is fantastic. I've stayed in YHAs with groups, DAV, guided mountain running, etc., and also use the cafe at Penny Pass, which is a fantastic cafe there at Penny Pass. Really, really popular. Get a lot of walkers using that cafe as well.
Yeah, we've also got, Mike, some nice comments on the chat. I don't know if you may not be able to see those, from people staying, in a range of hostels, and Oakhampton, Bellevue, Dartmoor, in Wilderhope,
yeah.
St. Greville's, for example.
St. Greville's, yeah. That's the castle I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just for other people's, it's Becky here, Becky Noakes. Just for other people's sort of, no, I mean, I've worked out of quite a few different YHAs with other companies, and looking to sort of use YHAs for my own courses moving forward. But places like Bringwinant is a perfect spot, for sort of Snowdon if you wanted an alternative for Pennepass. Conway has been really helpful. They've got storage for boats, etc., or they did have at the time. And you've got sort of walking and climbing there. Whereas Wilderhope, like I'd mentioned, that's brilliant for Shropshire Hills and all around there, for sort of walking, or you've got large grounds in Wilderhope as well, and it's a beautiful, and they were really helpful actually. A lot of these have been through NCS, so I've worked for providers who have provided activities from these places for NCS groups, and I've managed those. Manabir at Scrinklehaven, that was a brilliant one if you do any sort of sea or coastal activities. There was one at Broadhaven. Is that the one, Michael, with the camping and facilities?
That's right. That's correct. Yes, that's right.
More like a farm, I think, isn't it? Or was a farm? Or am I?
That's Broadhaven's had a. I don't know when you last went to Broadhaven, but that's had a. I was talking about the sites have had a refurbishment.
Yeah.
as one of those actually. So yeah,
and then St Breville's Castle again. You know, that was a really nice area to work in, and the group loved it there. So there's some fantastic places. Personally, I've stayed at quite a number, and as you mentioned, Hartington Hall's one of my favourites.
Hartington's amazing.
You know, for sort of £18-20 a night for your own room when you're working with groups and you want a bit of luxury in between.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, I mean, fantastic places. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of add that really for people who are maybe looking at places to think about doing activities from.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And you said you stayed at Hartington. Have you ever stayed at the one just down the road from there, Ilham Hall?
I've worked out of Ilham Hall. Yeah.
That's an amazing site. Yeah.
And Edale's fantastic as well. I love Edale. I've stayed there, and I know they do activities there, but as a personal sort of stay, I've stayed up at the sort of the top, just behind it. You know, that's a nice place. But yeah, all of the Ilham Hall is it's beautiful.
Stunning. Yeah. And again, that's just, thank you for that. It's really, really helpful. Thank you. And it's just showcases again the sites that we've got within the network, and they are, you know, some absolutely brilliant locations, and they're so varied, and they are a real range from rural to city to coastal. So yeah, thank you. One of the other sites we've got a YHA at now. We're the main accommodation provider. When I'm talking about varied, we are an accommodation provider down at the Eden Project in Cornwall. So that's really, really popular with both groups and family and individuals. And the accommodation down there are what we call snooze boxes, and they are former shipping containers, and each pod contains a double bed, a bunk bed, ensuite, and they've got climate control. You've got your own little TV in there as well if you want to watch the telly, but we can disable those for groups as well, for youth groups, so they can't get access to the TVs. But they're really popular, and it's like I say, former shipping containers, so it supports the YHA and the Eden Project, so environmental ethos, and yeah, great location. Anybody else got any other questions at the moment? I think I've got maybe one more slide just to talk about where we are in terms of the current situation with COVID-19. So happy to move on then. Shall I move on to the next slide, which I think is the final one? So I just wanted to talk about the current situation where we are with COVID. Someone just asked me about vision, and we were in line for one of, I think, our best ever year in terms of group business, 2021. But unfortunately, that's been kiboshed by the situation with COVID-19. So when we went into lockdown, as you can imagine, as everywhere was, all our 150 sites closed during that period. What we have done during that period, actually, though, is we've repurposed some of those sites to help support key workers, so sort of like NHS staff or key workers across various industries, and also vulnerable groups. So some of our sites we've managed to support during the pandemic, which has been really rewarding. But on July the 17th, we have reopened the majority of the network, but it's quite restricted in terms of what we can offer. So the main thing we can offer at the moment are private rooms only, or the exclusive hire product that we talked about earlier, and the camping in cabins product, which obviously or products that we can offer. So we are back open, and once we went back on sale, the sales, particularly from the 17th of July right through August and into September, went through the roof. So, which has been great to see, but obviously it's quite restricted what we can offer. We can offer food at certain locations, not all locations, mainly on a takeaway basis. None of our social areas, unfortunately, can be opened at the moment, and we're obviously continuing to listen to government advice and guidelines around that. The advice for groups at the moment is from the DfE was announced that they were advising against residential visits for the autumn at the moment. That could change, but probably unlikely to. But they would allow day visits for groups, and obviously you can have groups. We can have groups of families, 2 households, up to 6 people, plus a bubble, staying with us. So that's where we are at the moment, and looking forward to getting back to some normality and opening the network in full whenever that's possible. Obviously, we are very much governed by government guidelines at the moment. Anybody got any questions about anything in terms of our current situation on the back of COVID-19?
Mike, can I just check in terms of, because Philip earlier was asking about the Scottish Youth Hostel Association, if we can make sure we get a link so that as and when they're up and running, you know, people can access those.
Of course I will, yeah. I can put you in contact with the, I'll send you a link to their association, and any contact details you need, you know, to speak to them as well, and all the hostels, just let me know and I can send those over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And just to be clear with everyone, once we've edited this, we'll add these links on with the edited version that will be made, go out to MTA members for a couple of weeks prior to the public access. So I think hopefully that will be helpful for all. Okay, well, thank you, Mike. If we just move on, I'm mindful of the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, huge thanks to Mike for his time this morning on behalf of the Youth Hostel Association, and indeed, yeah, thanks for those details.
Right. Yeah, just share my contact details, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, great. And thanks to everybody for joining us this morning. We hope it's been useful. If we can just go forward to the last couple of slides. As ever, we really value your feedback. Do send that in to us. And in terms of this series of expert webinars, we've just got a couple more coming up. Which, you know, on the whole, primarily initially aimed at the course directors, and obviously go to MTA members as soon as they've been edited. So tomorrow morning, same time tomorrow, we have Ian from the Outward Bound Trust is going to be talking to us. I guess a lot of that is useful. That's about the work they do with young adults over at Estelle, and sort of focus, I guess, primarily on behavioural aspects, which are useful for developing leadership, not just ourselves, but also the people that we work with. So about how their approach to those aspects. And then our final session, which will be this time next week, is we have Tim from Ordnance Survey, who's going to be talking to us about digital navigation. So please do join us if you are able. We look forward to seeing you. And once again, huge thanks to Mike for giving up his time. Really appreciative, and we look forward to furthering our relationships and partnerships with Youth Hostel Association. And thank you.
Thank you for inviting me as well, Chris. So thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're delighted. And thanks all. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, folks, we'll end the session, but we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. And good luck with all your clients and your work. Thanks, guys.